top 25 opioid abuse cities in America. Wilmington, per capita, is still number one, with 11.6% of the people living in Wilmington saying that they abuse or are addicted to opioids. Hickory's 5, Jacksonville's 12, and Fayetteville's 18.
Why Wilmington?
I don't know. I've had that question over and over. I don't know. Has anybody got any thoughts? You'd think it'd be Asheville or Raleigh or Charlotte, but it's Wilmington. I don't know.
It's a port city. It's a
Port.
port.
It's a port. But I don't know how many drugs come through there. I don't know. That's a great question.
Could it be a reporting issue? Because
It could.
somebody needs to look at the question. Here we are in North Carolina, and you keep getting asked the question, but nobody's answering the question.
Yeah.
So it's either reporting or it's fact.
It's one of the two meccas for drug rehab, Asheville and Wilmington.
Okay.
That's
So
a good
kids
point.
come out of there, they tend to stay there, they overdose while they're there.
Yeah.
Oh, because they got treatment centers down there.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
big ones are gonna be Asheville and Wilmington.
There we go.
It's a good point. I hadn't thought of it from that. That
There you go.
makes sense. Yeah.
They go out
And the
there.
Judge Newby may have, Justice Newby may have some insights into that too. But anyway, in 2015, again, I've already said North Carolina was top 20 abuse states. We had over 12,000 opioid overdose deaths in those 17-year period. These were the counties. These numbers are low. If you go 2 years further down the road, 2017, that number's jumped to 13,000 opioid overdose deaths just 1 year later. But look at the numbers, and these are low too. Mecklenburg, Guilford, I mean, look at this. We went from the 30s to 60s up to 150, and you see all the counties. These are the top 10 counties. With Gaston, I know, is over 50 now, so it's changing. You can't keep up with this stuff. It's ever changing.
But you really need per capita. I mean, some of those counties are small counties, but they have a high
Sure.
rate of death. Like Vance County is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to look at Vance County
Sure.
because that's an outlier that needs to be addressed.
right. Yeah, these are just looking at hard numbers, but you're right. It's per
If you look
capita.
at per capita, I mean, the two biggest counties, Mecklenburg and Wake,
Yeah,
it's not necessarily, but Gaston's a small county.
yeah.
You know.
This is, I've already mentioned about the neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome, the neonatal abstinence syndrome. In Buncombe County alone, Mission Hospital reports over 400 live births of babies addicted every year. And as you know, babies that are addicted, a lot of times they're started on morphine or methadone or different other narcotics to wean them off. But it's a real big issue in that area. And the thing looking at cost, that's just an average cost of what it costs to help these babies get off of these narcotics, $51,000. So what do we do about it in the last minute here? And these are pretty standard things that we talked about. Reduce the amount, medicated assisted treatment, and naloxone use. I will say again that North Carolina does have a dental plan, and for the dentist, it may sound kind of corny, but it really is not, because we're getting real specific about what we're going to be recommending. Obviously, naloxone that you're familiar with. Some of you are familiar with this very expensive nasal spray. Elementary kids in Massachusetts that have family members who are in recovery are actually, there's a class they can take on how to inject this into a teddy bear. So, I mean, it's just a little kid or something. They practice showing how to give it into a teddy bear, so that if they have a family member that's been in treatment for heroin, that they'll be able to do that at home if this happens. In the state of California, they're now talking about co-prescribing this with every opioid prescription. 2 of these little nasal sprays are $125 a piece, so you get about $250 in that little 2-pack. I don't know. I mean, if you got an $8 prescription for 15 opioids and you get a $250 Narcan, but they're talking about co-prescribing that. Evzio, has anyone heard of this? This is the AED, sort of like it talks to you. You pull the top off and it says, you have 5 seconds, and it says about as much time as I have left. It says 5 seconds, and it says pop it off, and it'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you put it into your leg and hold it there for 5 seconds. A lot of EMTs and emergency people are using this. This is the one that had the big story on 60 Minutes. I don't have time to go into it, but this is what most people are using as pre-dose. Naloxone kits to date, we've had over 104,000 as of January 31st. This year, this is new data that just came out. 104,000, that's fantastic. We've had 13,000 community reversals. These are non-medic, non-doctor reversals. This is where the community's learning how to give naloxone. We have 29 active counties in North Carolina where syringe exchange programs are currently used. Governors McCrory and Governor Cooper have been a real advocate, I feel like, for making sure naloxone and this is happening because it's it affects everybody. And about 90%, 90 counties are carrying naloxone. The law enforcement people are carrying that. This is one thing I want you to see, right? Do I have to do this? Yeah, okay. So I want to show you this. This is through January 31st of 2019. What can we gather from this graph? If you see that in 2016 that 58% of the people that were given one dose of naloxone reversed with that, and 32% had to have a second, 10%. If you see here that in 2019 only 24% are actually reversing, that's telling us what we've been talking about. Fentanyl strength is going up, and this is why I have a patient who's a fireman, and he's out of Charlotte. He says he's given 5 or 6 Narcan, and sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. Prescription drug monitoring programs are huge issues in Raleigh and Washington and every state capital. I will just say that prescription drug monitoring programs are in every state now. Missouri has 21 counties that actually are involved in this. My good friend is the president of the dental board there, and he says they're still talking back and forth all the time because one side says, let these drug addicts die, and the other side says, no, we need to be there to help them. So that's the issue in Missouri. These yellow states have some type of stop act or some kind of requirement to go back and look 3, 6, 9, 12 months before prescribing. The blue states don't, but they will soon. The good news here on this data exchange time period, it used to be North Carolina was 72 hours before information showed up. So if a lady in Idaho got a prescription at 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday, it wouldn't show up into North Carolina until Thursday. Now it's within 24 hours. And partly responsible for that is this National Association of Boards of Pharmacies, PMP, where states can now talk between themselves. One of the things that people who are seeking drugs like to do are to try to buy drugs at borders. So in North Carolina, they'd go into South Carolina, buy the drugs, go back to North Carolina, it would show up on the North Carolina CSRS. But now all that shows up potentially. Acute dental pain, this is just my thing about dentists, but I'm not going to give you a recommendation. I just be careful about acetaminophen and the liver stuff because we have had some toxicity issues. Ibuprofen, personally I give 3 ibuprofen and 1 extra strength Tylenol as a first choice because I know it's the most effective and it's going to be non-addictive. And I tell dentists and physicians in every possible case, make it your first choice because nothing's going to change in this whole effort to correct the opioid epidemic unless we do what we know scientifically is the best for our patients. And giving opioids for dental pain and a lot of times in medicine is not the first choice. Dr. Teeter is a medical doctor, treats chronic pain patients. Anybody know him? In Asheville, Waynesville? He runs nothing but chronic pain patients. He's gotten all his patients off opioids except for 5. And so he's very, very good at talking to patients. And it's a re-education of our system. It's a whole re-education. It's not anything you've been taught in medical school or dental school. Exparel, I don't mean to be using the labels here, but the Pivocaine, the ADA for the dentist, we just got that passed. We know that there's a code now, and one of the things the dental group in North Carolina is trying to do is to get insurance companies to help with this because this is expensive. There's like, $200, $250 for a 10 cc bottle. And then we know that it works very effective. It's been used in medicine for years, OBGYN, plastics, neuro, whatever. My son had some surgery, our son had some surgery at Chapel Hill 2 years ago and had Exparel and had Crohn's disease, had some small intestine taken out. He was pretty much pain-free for 3 or 4 days and then the discomfort started coming back and his doctor said it was from the Exparel. So you guys are more familiar with that than I am, but this is something I'm hoping is going to come into the dental field. This is my suggested treatment sequence for me as a dentist and hopefully as a physician. you can apply some of this as it applies. Ibuprofen, acetamin first, Exparel and palliative care, especially in the mouth with heat and ice, warm saline, ice, if they can tolerate it. Occasionally, if you have to use steroids, we typically recommend some type of steroid. And then if you have to prescribe an opioid for whatever reason, I used to, at this point, would say, okay, just give them 15 opioids. Well, what I'm doing now is I will not give them more than 4 because I'm thinking about that study that talked about 6% of the people, I don't want to be part of that problem, that I'll give opioids when they can take them with Phenergan. And they've shown that Phenergan and opioids together will actually double the analgesic effect without reducing respiration. So I like that, and we have conversations with our patients. We talk about, for the first 24 hours, I'm going to do this is what my part is, and this is what your part is, and then we're going to reevaluate your pain in 24 hours. And it's amazing. I can count on one hand how many opioids I've had to write in the last several years. As a dentist, I understand about the physicians. And this is my last thing, the biopsychosocial spiritual model of addiction, or who we are as human beings. I like to say, is this going to start buzzing? No. Okay, good. I like to say that medicine does a pretty good job at the bio. We understand what goes on up here pretty much. Psycho, we have all the therapists and counselors. The social, we know where to send you, who to get you involved with, and how to get your life back, and treatment and all that. But the spiritual is something that's very distant to us. It's not something we can easily associate with. And so I just, you remember the hole in the heart I showed? Well, this is a symbol that I like to use. I think everyone's looking for a savior. That's what I like to say. And for me, it's Christ. And I think if we fill that with Christ, as Dr. Horn said, not stuff and things and places and money and all that stuff, and it's a daily struggle. I mean, and I like these verses. John 3:19 is probably my favorite Bible verse. It's not John 3:16, but it says, "And this is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil." That doesn't mean everybody's evil that does drugs. I mean, some of them are sick, some of them have a tendency, heredity, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying, we don't seek out the solution. We always seek out what's going to make our problems worse. The thief, John 10:10, the thief does not come to except to steal and to kill and to destroy. And he talks about he's come to give us eternal life, that we may have it more abundantly. And then 1 Peter encourages us to be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And the opioid epidemic is doing nothing but that. And so I just encourage you to, stay up on your education on this issue, and involve yourself with your patients, and watch what happens, because I'd rather be part of the solution than continue on with the problem. Thank you, and I hope I didn't go over too far.